everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Power of the Mind, brought to you by Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare. And as always, we've got Madison Isenberg checking in. How's it going, girl?
It's going good. How are you?
Good. So a long time ago, a couple years ago, when Greg was in here, I asked the question, Greg, I have 5 children. We raised them in the same house. Husband, wife, mom, dad, we're the same. All 5 children are ours. Everything, why are they so different? And we learned, it turned into, as I'm assuming this will too, into a big, whole series. But he's a dad. And yes, he's, got all those awesome letters after his name. And I knew he's the total pro on all of this, but he's a dad and you're a mom. And so I would like to explore this again. And, I think things have also changed over the last couple of years for everybody. And it just might be a great refresher and dig a little deeper, especially from the mom's perspective and how you see it. Because sometimes he's a very engaged dad, but sometimes dads are still la la la. Yeah. We did this. It was cool. We played football for an hour. I've done my duty for the week, and he seems very engaged, but it's still, I don't know that all dads are picking up on that emotional level that the moms do. So I'm going to ask you, I have 5 kids, still have 5 kids. None of that has changed. The only thing that's changed is now we just celebrated our 34th anniversary and getting ready for 35.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And still, all of my kids are wildly different. Why?
Birth order.
Significantly.
I feel like it's not always true, but the majority of the time it's more true than it's not. And I feel like where we stand in regards to being either the oldest to the youngest child plays a significant role in almost what's not predestined for you, but what's the usual cultural norm when it comes to families, right? So it's about finding, which role you play most significantly with. And most of the time, it's destined upon chronological order. So let's dive a little bit into that.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
The oldest.
My favorite. My favorite is the oldest.
Were you the oldest?
Yes. So first daughter, first child, first grandchild, first everything. First one to really mess up. So yeah, the first.
Absolutely.
Oldest.
So with the oldest, it's all the new memories, right? New beginnings, right? Mm-hmm. Families happen, parents get married or they don't, and they have a kid. They're usually the firstborn is the first of everything. So they get the majority of the attention because they get parents before they're burnt out, mm-hmm. right? So with the first child, it's usually the first milestones. It's like, oh, it's the first time they walked. Oh, it's the first time they talked. And more expectations are mm-hmm. set upon the oldest child to meet those milestones, to be destined to achieve more because there's higher expectations for the oldest child.
Of course. You don't want to mess this up.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be perfect.
Yeah. And parents often feel, well, this is my first child. I have to do it right. They're not burnt out yet.
Right.
So with the oldest child, right, often they tend to be perfectionists. They will struggle with thoughts of, well, I have to. Not I get to, I have mm-hmm. to. And that belief, right? They often struggle with that perfectionism leading on to every area of their life and showing up in their work, showing up with how they perform, how they succeed, because they believe they can't fail. And often the most expectations are set on them as kids because they're setting the example for the younger siblings. Mm-hmm. How often do we hear, be good for your younger brother? You're setting an example. And whether intentionally or not, I've said that.
Mm-hmm. I've said it. I say it to my granddaughter.
Your brother's watching you and he's mm-hmm. going to do what you do. I think of it with my kids all the time. I'm like, well, this is Dexter. I'm like, Dexter, set a good example for Sawyer. You have to teach him. And there's more expectations set upon a child when we do that, whether intentionally or not. So they're predestined almost to feel like they can't mess up. So much pressure. They're the golden child. they feel like they have to succeed at a higher level. Those expectations are there constantly, and they're getting more attention from mom and dad at the beginning. They get the all in the beginning because there's no other kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember we had the baby book. So that was a big thing back when I was born. And so, of course, I did it for my kids. And I remember my first child, and I remember it even with me and my sister, my baby book, here's your lock of hair. Here's, they took their first step and here's a picture of it. And she tried oatmeal today and this and this. And my sister's book has she was born. Yeah. That's it. And you're lucky. And I think that was written in 3 different markers. It's like, it's like you're burnt out and you don't have time, or you're trying to juggle everything. But yeah, the expectation of being the oldest. And it's funny because I notice for me, I'm always in a power position. I always want to be in charge of everything, as we've discussed, but I am not a perfectionist in every aspect of my life. I am in of course, cheerleading. Of course, I want that to be perfect. My job, but my car is a mess all the time. I'm just too creative of a mind to stop to clean out my car, but and I'm just in it all the time. And it's just, and people who know me, they'll see my closet at home is organized to the inch, everything, my drawers are organized. And they're like, really? Because I don't have that personality of having all my stuff together, but I definitely like being in charge. But I was always put in that position. So I just always assume because that's how I was raised is how I'm going to be. But one thing that's changed since we've had this conversation is at the time that I had the conversation with Greg, my oldest did not really portray those oldest child. It was definitely, as a child, she was the one that was just she would get in all the trouble. Come on, let's do this. And my second born was the mom. Oh no, we're going to get in trouble and you have to do this and I have to be perfect and everything is, we can't, mess around. And my oldest was like, let's go. But since then, that role has changed for her. She is in charge. She is the one that is. And then my second born is turned into, just more fly by night, still very organized and everything, but just, my oldest has really taken on that oldest. She's the one I know. She's the ride or die. She's the one that I go to for everything because she will take care of it.
They're leaders.
Yeah.
They're natural leaders.
And even if they didn't want it in the beginning,
it's there. Whether they want it or not, they're predestined to it.
Now, what about for me? I notice that I'm a doer and I am a protector. What does that do for my children as far as, because I'm an oldest child, I'm the hero, whatever. Because I noticed it took my kids longer to turn into their roles because they didn't have to. My oldest will say, well, we didn't have to be in charge of anything because you always took care of everything. So we didn't have to even worry. So do you see that as different birth orders raising their children differently?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. The oldest child, usually how they raise their kids, they'll be more, there will be usually more structure, routine, more things put in order, things, have places, they have plans, they usually have a daily agenda.
Because you can see that too. You can see where you've got 2 sisters that are raising their kids together and you go and you see, and these kids are just like, oh, did you bring snacks? Oh, I think I got some fruit snacks in the back of the car, melted to the back seat. Yeah, I've got a bag. I've brought the sunscreen. I made sure I've got a change of clothes just in case. I brought some for you too, because,
we knew you were going to forget.
You knew you'd forget. So, that's interesting. Yes. So do you notice that the kids of those firstborn are a little more relaxed or a little more driven?
Driven.
Okay.
Very much so.
So it's a pretty vicious cycle for those firstborns.
Absolutely. It carries on. The cycle will carry on. And then you get to middle children, right? Let's talk about that. So with the middle children, well, they're often referred to as the peacemaker. They don't want contention. They'll feel stuck between. They often feel isolated. They feel like they struggle to connect. They often struggle with meeting their own needs because sometimes they feel like their needs aren't as important because the oldest is already taking the show.
Yeah.
So they're almost like the forgotten child, the middle child. They have a sense of feeling overlooked. So like I said, they'll put their needs second because they don't get as much attention. Think about it. The first one's born. Now you got two. You only have two arms, but you can only do so much as a mom or a dad, but especially as a mom.
Well, and at this point, when you've had your second baby, this one is now mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't just put them in a corner. I've got to stay on that one, and it's easier just to swaddle this one.
And it's no longer the first of everything.
Yep, been there, done that.
Been there, done that, seen it. Oh, and milestones aren't as celebrated. They're not as significant because they've already seen it. Parents have already experienced. But they have an expectation almost to where they feel like they're second best to the oldest child, always living in the shadow of. Because the oldest will achieve, right? Rather, they're driven. The middle child with the belief of, I'm not enough because they're struggling to be seen, they often will create their own show.
Right.
Because they have to know how to play with themselves. They have to know how to engage with themselves because they don't always get the attention anymore. The oldest has been there, and then you get a third child in the midst.
Oh, Lord.
So what do you think happens then?
Well, I would think with the second child, when there's a third, now focus goes to the baby. But also you've got to continue with that hero.
Mm-hmm.
And so that second born is completely, they've got to find that role of what's their new role.
Yeah. So they went from the youngest of getting all the attention.
The baby.
And there's usually some resentment, whether known or not, to the baby from the middle child because they took their attention away.
The little that they were getting.
Correct. But now they took even more. Think about it.
Yeah.
The middle child feels lost. The middle child often feels forgotten because it's like, well, the oldest is over here accomplishing everything. And then you get the middle child who's the free-spirited hellion that comes along in the picture. And it's like, where do I fit in? The middle is often where I see that children struggle the most because they don't feel like they have a place. And they will often give up their needs at the expense of others and put themselves second.
I noticed that with my third born. It was funny because she was an only child for, I think it was 4 years. And not only child, the youngest child for 4 years. And then she became the middle child because the new kids came along. And she is the forgotten child. And even to this day, I mean, she lives on our property and I'm still like, oh yeah, because she's so good at entertaining herself, vibing with her friends. And so many of her friends are her online buddies, where, and she is the peacemaker to like, I don't know conflict. I don't want to hear about it. Let's just move on. I lost her all the time. I lost her in Las Vegas. I lost her at a swap meet. I lost her at Disneyland because we would stop and she would just keep walking along in her own little world. Yeah, the forgotten. And she just was so good at entertaining herself and following along with whatever her sisters told her to do. Like, hey, today we're going to play house and you're the baby and we're going to do this, or we're doing a salon and you're the whatever. Okay. She never forged her own way.
Yeah.
Just always followed what her sisters were doing.
Absolutely. And they almost feel like they have to. The middle child looks up to the oldest child and they'll look to them for guidance. And when that's the thing that gets alarming is when they don't have a close bond in families. That's when you often see them going from the peacemaker to the isolating and going to more, becoming more of an introvert because of that.
Oh, good. So I can blame my children for my children issues.
Absolutely.
Well, because it makes sense because when the 3 oldest ones were growing up, the first one kind of rebelled and went and did her own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she left home pretty early and was kind of doing her thing. And my second born was very maternal and was very much the second mama to the 2 littles, because I had 2 hands and I had 5 kids. And my second took on that role of like the mom. I always thought she was going to have like 10 kids and just be this mom. And she didn't. It's so funny. And so then there's my middle, the third, who she's not the mom. She doesn't have an older sister to look up to because big sister, the oldest, has gone her own path right now. So she did really isolate. And when you're a mom with this many kids and you're working full time, and I don't want to use it as an excuse, but it's so easy to just, good, they're doing their own thing. Cool, I don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. And they make it look like they're so comfortable because they're so used to it. So they have taken on that role of being comfortable with being the forgotten child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they usually have a great sense of creativity, though.
She does too.
If you look at the middle child, they're very creative because they've had to spend that much time alone and find out what they're interested in. They have a strong sense of self too. Mm-hmm. A very strong sense of self.
Yeah, she's like with her too. I know with her, she never complains. So if I'm short one or don't have as many to put, like if a Christmas stocking or whatever, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't worry about her because things like this aren't important to her. Yeah. And that's silly. Like as a mom, you know, you look back on those things, but it was always like, oh, she won't care. Mm-hmm. Because she makes it look like she doesn't care. Mm-hmm. And then as she gets older, you go, oh, wow. Because then when they start talking to you and telling you things, I'm like, who knew? Like you
made it seem like you were so strong. Mm-hmm. You know, you made it seem like you were okay, you know, giving yourself that own attention, spending that alone time playing by yourself. You seemed fine.
Well, no, it's funny because we're a cheer family, always been a cheer family. She didn't like cheer. I made her do it one year because I'm like, you don't know that you don't like it if you don't do it. She didn't like it. And so we let her quit cheer the following year, and she went and wanted to do softball. And so we all would go to her softball games and we would all, you know, pray. So it wasn't as if she was completely forgotten. But she did. She forged her own path. She wanted to do her own thing. And I wanted to get as far away from everything that you guys are doing as possible.
Yeah, make my own journey. Mm-hmm. They have a fierce sense of independence.
Yeah, she walks to the beat of her own drum. For sure.
Of course. She plays her own music. Mm-hmm. And then let's go to the youngest child.
The baby.
Oh, yes, the baby. I'll tell you a funny thing that happened the other day. So I was sitting on the couch with my oldest son, Dexter, and my youngest son, Sawyer. My youngest son is autistic. He's very literal. So I was talking to his oldest brother, and I said, come here, baby, talking to Dexter. Sawyer looks over and he goes, what? I go, what's wrong? He goes, he is not the baby. He is not the youngest. I am the baby.
That's cute.
So that just proves, you know what I mean? The baby knows they're the baby.
The baby knows they're the baby.
Absolutely, they know they're baby. And then you get parents who now have an older child, now a middle child, and then you add in a third child. You're outnumbered now. Yes. That is significant. You are outnumbered now. So you have one parent per child you used to, whereas, you know, in the beginning, now you're outnumbered. So, and you get to a point where you're exhausted. And also, you know, it's your last experience. So the baby remains the baby forever. Mm-hmm. To the whole family, though, to the siblings and to the parents. They will think the middle child will think that's their baby. The youngest is the middle child's baby. They'll often protect them at all costs, at the expense of their own needs. Again,
yeah,
you know, what can I do for you? They want to help. The middle child wants to help the youngest. So you get the youngest who almost gains a sense of inferiority because they're seen as my needs are most important because they're the baby. Mm-hmm. So all the attention that was for the middle and for the oldest is now at the baby because the other kids are old enough to do their own thing, hopefully. If they're not, they're still older than a baby and they need less than a baby. So your attention's going to be driven to the baby. You got 2 crying kids. You got a baby bawling your eyes out and you got a toddler crying. The baby's bawling their eyes out. You got to check the baby first. Make sure what does the baby need, because you know the toddler can voice it.
Yep.
The infant can't use their voice yet. So you're going to go to the infant and you're almost going to give the infant more because the infants can't tell you what they need. So you're going to give more of that attention to the youngest, whether intentionally or not. You're just going to.
When you get frustrated with the middle child because grow up.
Yeah.
You know, you need to stop acting like a baby. You are not a baby.
You're not a baby anymore.
Yeah.
They have to grow.
I was a baby yesterday.
Yeah. Middle children grow up, and that's where that resentment often comes into play with the middle child, with the youngest child. That's almost always there with the family. The middle child will have some form of resentment against the youngest because the youngest stole the show. Completely just stole it.
I think for us, we've got the new kids and the old kids. And with the old kids, there's a 6-year age gap from the youngest to the oldest of the new kids. And I just call them the new kids because the 6-year gap. And I think what saved the last 2 from the sibling rivalry was my 4th child is a boy and the only boy. And so he had that sense of entitlement, and he was the blessed be boy that entered, and he's still that way.
Yeah.
And then we had a 5th child so that he could have a friend, is honestly why it was like, oh my gosh, there's a 6-year age gap. These 3 were lucky enough to grow up together. Josh is going to be all by himself. I'm tired of trying to do the seesaw with him. We were on the little teeter-totter. And I was like, he needs a buddy. Yeah. Let's have another boy. Well, we got a girl. And they are besties. They are really good friends, and they've always got along really well growing up. But I think that comes from Josh is the boy, the only.
It started over.
And then Allie's the baby. But they both.
Is Josh driven?
He is now. It took some time. Video games derailed that a lot. Allie is more driven than Josh, and Allie's the baby. But Allie is the baby, and she will let you know, and she is the epitome of the baby, the spoiled. I can go shopping with her, and before I know it, there's 500 things in the basket for her. I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
But Mom, I have to pay my rent, and and I'm just a baby. Like, she'll say that, I'm just a baby. You're 23 years old, but she is the baby.
Yeah. And the baby will remain the baby forever. Like Sawyer said, I'm the baby. You're going to remain a baby. Often the youngest will be the more rambunctious. They will be more free-spirited, like a free-spirited child. They will be the first to make a lot of naughty decisions because parents are exhausted by then.
Tired. Well, she was the one that got the car at 16. And everybody, the oldest, why did she get the car? She's so spoiled. I'm tired. I am tired of, we live 20 minutes out of town. I am tired every time one of you guys want to go somewhere, driving you all the way into town. And Josh wasn't one to want to go into town or hang out. Allie was. She's like, I want to go I want to go hang with my friends, or I want to go to a movie. Good Lord. I mean, she was in cheer. So the sooner I could get her behind the wheel of a car, the better. The difference between her, she was very responsible with her car, and she's very responsible in all things of her life. But she is definitely but the kids, there's so much resentment. You never let me do that. I never got the car.
Well, and often kids forget, though, that usually by now parents have their stuff together a little bit more. Think about it. Parents usually becomes parents before you can be a parent all the way. Finances. You don't get finances in order till years down the road. Nobody does. It's a growing opportunity for everybody.
That's true.
But think about it. As comparison to how you used to spend money years ago, to when your firstborn was born to now, you have more. At least the majority of the time, right? So the baby is going to get more things, more attention, and it's also the last.
Oh, it's a sickness. I'm going to tell you. The baby lived in, our house has 2 master bedrooms, and the baby at 14 or 15 is living in the big master bedroom because she's a teenager and she needs all these things. And one of my children moved in with their baby And I did not give the big room to them. I put them into a little, because I'm not disrupting her life because you need this. So you get to move into this. It's not like as if I put them in a, backyard, but you're not getting the big room. And I look back on that and go, oh my gosh, I should have totally given that to my daughter and her brand new baby. But instead it was like, I can't disrupt Allie.
Yeah, she's the baby.
She's the baby. I mean, this would devastate her if I, rearranged her whole life and did all this. And, it's crazy. It's funny because I nursed Allie for 2.5 years because that was the last one. And I have video of me recording us going, okay, this is it. And my oldest now has a 2-year-old. And she used to make fun of me all the time. Oh my gosh, you breastfed Allie until she was walking and going to kindergarten, basically. I said, you see. And her oldest took it away herself. She's like, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. My youngest grandbaby is 2 and 3 months. She still nurses. And my oldest, I'm never giving that up.
Yeah.
As long as she wants it, she gets it.
It's the youngest. And it's also parents' last time to know they're going to get to have those last memories. The last time to make it right.
Yeah.
Often that guilt that you feel from the other kids, the youngest gets all the ramification, but the great results from it. It's like, these oldest and middle suffer consequences of the parents being so busy. And then the youngest, and you're like, oh, can't mess it up. This is my last opportunity. So you usually get more attention to the youngest. And sometimes, if you think about it, the oldest are out of the house by then.
Right.
And then who are you left with? You're left with the baby. And the baby is always going to be the baby.
Gosh, she's a brat. But I love her.
Yeah.
I love her so much. I love all my kids, but at 20, and she's 23, I still make excuses for her to guys, she's only 23. And think how bad you were messed up at 23. And at least she's responsible. She's doing what she so I still, even though it's just funny. I will always make excuses. And even for Josh, because he's only 25. And he's the crowned prince. And if my husband ever yells at him, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And then my husband will feel such I can't believe I yelled at Josh. Because he's just so easygoing. And so
yeah.
You yelled at him? He's like, well, he needs tires on his car. And he didn't. It was but he's the baby. They're the babies. For years, it was where are the babies?
Yeah.
Where are the babies? And speaking of exhaustion, I remember I was nursing Allie and I'm running around looking for her. Where's the baby? Where is Allie? Where is she? And they're like, Mom. I'm like, oh my God. That's how tired you
It's
are.
exhausting,
Exhausted.
And the more kids you add to, the more exhausting it is. And sometimes you'll see chronological, the birth order start over if you have kids that have years between the two. It will start over.
That's awesome. I want to stop here because I really want to dive into, firstborn, secondborn, the roles that they play. But I think this was a great overview to kind of get us started and, get us thinking and how we want to take this. But thank you so much. And I love sharing stories with you because as moms, it's we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been there. We've done that. And it's also refreshing to hear other moms go, I was exhausted. I mean, I'd walk out of the house looking like a mess, but kids on point and just trying to get this one ready and then sit still while you're trying to it's just a lot. So sharing that with the mom is awesome to know.
Exactly.
That. So we'll dive more into birth order and all that good stuff and why kids are so different in the same households on the next episode. And again, thank you for tuning in to Power of the Mind with Madi and Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare.